Welcome to the Ask ML Fit Show. Hey, I'm Matt from Matt Lane Fitness. If you're new here, it's exactly what it looks like. Look on the side here. You ask your fitness questions and I'll answer them. I want to be like the Sherpa to your fitness questions. I hope you'll answer them. I'm a personal trainer, registered nurse, and a behavioral change specialist. With all that aside, let's dive into today's questions. Big shout out to Chris and John. Appreciate you guys leaving the comment. I'm jumping into Chris Smith's comment first. This was pertaining to a video, and I'll be honest, Chris, I misplaced which video you were talking about, but the point is still going to remain the same. Awesome advice here. Completely agree. Matt, I keep hearing from people that 80-20 is the only way to go. So losing weight is always 80% diet and 20% exercise. But what you're saying here is it sounds like more of a 50-50 ratio of diet to exercise. What is your take on the 80-20 advice? So, Chris, here's the thing. Typically, you'll hear me talking about 80-20 in regards to flexible nutrition. So, 80% of the food would be whole foods, quote-unquote good, clean foods that most people would refer to it as, and then the other 20% is whatever the hell you want. So that's flexible nutrition. As long as you're within that calorie goal, hit the protein goal for your goals, then it's all good. But referring to this, when it comes to nutrition and the training, you really have to take a look at what's the goal, because there are times where you can have one without the other to achieve your goal. So if we're talking fat loss, because it sounds like, losing weight is what you're mentioning here, you can lose weight without exercising at all. So in a sense, nutrition could be 100% of the game. You absolutely can increase your activity, but if you're not in a calorie deficit, so let's say you have to take in 2,000 calories, this is an arbitrary number, 2,000 calories in a day to maintain your weight, maintain your body function, maintain the level of fat that you have. If you eat anything more than that 2,000 calories on a trend, you're going to gain fat, gain weight. The same thing goes for the opposite. If you eat under 2,000 calories on a trend, you're going to start to drop fat, drop weight. But it is so much easier to consume calories than it is to burn calories. So, you go do a workout of whatever sort. You go run, you lift weights, you ride a bike, you swim, whatever. Really figuring out how many calories you're burning is tough to do. And wrist-worn smartwatches and whatnot, they're wildly inaccurate. And if you're on a treadmill and it tells you burned 600 calories in 15 minutes. No, you didn't. It's wildly inaccurate. So, is diet and exercise, are they 50-50? I don't believe they're 50-50 when it comes to your goal. If the goal is fat loss, no. Nutrition is wildly more important when it comes to fat loss. Now, if your goal is building muscle, if your goal is building strength, you cannot build strength only by eating. There has to be the training aspect. You have to provide that stimulus to the body to grow. You have to force your body to grow. So is it 80-20? Is it 50-50? It depends on the goal. It depends on the goal. For fat loss, there's many ways you can do it, but if you're not watching the calories, you are going to overestimate how many calories you're burning through the activity, and you're going to underestimate how many calories you're consuming. I will actually drop a study down below about that because it's really interesting how much we over and underestimate those aspects. So if you said, all right, Matt, what would you say then if it's 80-20 for fat loss? I would say that it's 80% diet. There again, it could be 100% diet. And then, if you're a marathon runner, then, you're burning up a crap load of calories. It could go a different direction. But for general people, for yourself and whatnot, if you're not, a massive athlete or something, I think the 80-20 rule is actually a pretty good percentage. Now, that's not hard facts or anything. That's just what I've seen. Chris, I'm currently traveling and editing this video, but I wanted to make one more point. Ultimately, you can work out a crap load and make it a high percentage of actual activity, or you can not eat a lot of food and basically put a high percentage on the nutrition. You can make it what you want. Moving on to the next question. I appreciate you, Chris. John Mahone slapped me with a heck of a question, which I appreciate it. The more specific, the better. It allows me to dive into what the question really is. So this is on the video I did, you should quit working out because you'll lose. And John said, I'm working on losing weight, 275 to 280 pounds on average. I tried to lose weight a while ago and got down to 250, good for you, but gained it all back. I have a motivation issue. But this time I'm trying to get fit right. I'm starting the gym and starting to cook more healthily for myself and changing my path to the gym to avoid all possible fast food restaurants and all possible food vices. I'm not counting calories yet. I'm gonna do that when I feel I'm getting over the hump of being motivated to cook. I'm doing free weight training, slowly finding my way and figuring out my current limits. Is there a rep cycle you'd recommend? I'm currently doing 5x3, upping the weight if I'm not tuckered out. I've been interested in squats and leg workouts, but I've heard so many injury stories about the exercises. Is it all of it form, or is there a safer squat style compared to others? Also, are there any cookbook recommendations you have? So John, a lot you're asking here, which again, I'm glad, but I want to address this one first. You're asking about rep ranges. When it comes to rep ranges, the big difference would be, are you trying to build strength? Are you trying to build some muscle? Or are you looking for endurance? So where it does seem to make more sense, and there's science to back this, I'll put some studies down below. When it comes to strength training, you really want to put a lot of weight on the bar and you want to get stronger. You don't really care about building muscle or dropping fat. Then heavier loads, it looks like it is more important to shoot for heavier loads. So that's something that you would do lower rep ranges for. If it's fat loss, I'm glad you're doing something. I'm glad you're moving your body, because the more movement you have, the more calories you burn, and then you're ultimately dropping fat from that. So I'm glad you're moving. Could you be doing something a little more optimal? I think so. I think possibly, because we want to elevate the heart rate for as long as we can, right? So if you were doing something like 3 to 4 sets of 10 to 12, that may give you, more bang for your buck as far as the time you're putting in. If you're trying to build muscle, then what matters there is the amount of volume that you're doing, and then are you doing more volume over time? So put it for an example here. Let's say that you're doing 100 pounds on the bar and you're doing 5 squats. So you go up and down 5 times, right? 100 times 5 gives you the total volume of that set, 500 pounds. Now, if you do that 3 times, you're gonna have 500, 500, 500 for 1,500 pounds of total volume. If you increase that 1,500 pounds, if you increase that over time, that is called progressive overload. You are increasing the total volume of work, and that's what builds muscle. And when it comes to building muscle, from the literature, it doesn't seem to matter if you do high reps, low weight, or high weight with low reps. I'm currently editing and traveling, and I messed it up in the original video. Building muscle can happen at any rep range or any weight range. Fat loss, I would be shooting for what's gonna elevate that heart rate for a longer period of time, if that makes sense. I did wanna touch on some of these other things here. So the first portion, you talk about avoiding fast food restaurants, getting rid of all possible food vices, and all that. So if you know yourself and you know you can stick to that, then fantastic. Most people can't. And I have found that cutting things off hardcore can set a lot of people up for failure. Speaking to the calories and getting motivated as a whole, motivation is a fleeting thing that gets you started, and it's not going to be the thing that gets you 3 years down the road with consistency continuing forward. So I would highly suggest that you dig deep and figure out your why that you're doing this, because that's going to put more of an importance on it rather than I just want to drop a little bit of weight. What's the reason behind wanting to drop some weight, drop some fat? That's going to put a higher level of value on it for you, and it's going to get you to do those things when you're not as excited about doing it, because those times are going to come, I promise. And then also you mentioned at the bottom, are there any good cookbooks you would try? So I'm not a fan of cookbooks, just that's personally. I'm not saying that it's not a good thing. I know that Remington James Fitness has an ongoing cookbook that he updates. I think it's about $100, and he keeps adding more recipes to it, and I've heard nothing but great things about it. I haven't consumed it myself, just because recipes for me is not something I know I can sustain. I would rather meal prep once every 2 weeks and not have to cook for 2 weeks and have consistent food. But if that works for you, then do it. Lastly, are there any safer squat styles, or is it all form? Any movement you do, you can get injured with. Any movement you do with too heavy a weight, you increase the chances of getting hurt if you don't have good form. So form is a huge part about it. Some of the times it's people loading up the bar with too much weight too soon, not focusing on progressively getting stronger. YouTube it or Google it, torn bicep, torn pec. The squat itself is not a dangerous movement if you're doing it correctly. So form has a huge thing to do with it, but I would suggest that you start with a body weight squat, keep working from there and then add weight as time goes. I hope that helped, and I hope that if you're looking for fitness plans based in behavior change and science, it's exactly what I do, so check it out down below. To the Mental Fit Mafia, to the patrons, I appreciate you so much. You mean the world to me. And to Chris and to John, thank you so much for your questions. I hope that you'll drop your questions down below. You don't have to be perfect at this fitness thing. Just be better than yesterday. Every day.